Evening, members. Thank you very much indeed. We are now live. Good evening. Welcome to this Strategy and Resources Committee meeting on the 9th of November. My name is Councillor Mark Durham and I'm the chairman of this committee. Members, we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording. By being present in the meeting, you're giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Can I ask members to avoid approaching the top table? I'm sure nobody will, as this could create interference with cameras and live stream. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of the microphones. Therefore, can I ask that when invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and turn it off again when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers. Keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. Thank you. Item 2, apologies for absence. Tara.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, apologies received from Councillor Jennings, and Councillor Spenceley is attending as a substitute for Councillor Jennings. Councillor Nick Spenceley, sorry, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 3, minutes. It's recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of September, found on pages 5 to 16, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Fluker. No, I know. I'm asking you to speak.
Chairman, paragraph, I beg your pardon, page 6, the last paragraph. Chairman, the way this is written, it seems as though that I was opposing everything. Chairman, what I was actually speaking to was the skate parks, and that they should be, and that should be recorded in the minutes. I wasn't saying we should send all of these projects out, because that would be quite foolhardy. But what I refer to as the skate parks in particular, and I gave the reasons why. So, Chairman, I'd certainly like that recording, and I have other issues as well, Chairman.
Well, I recall that vividly, Councillor Fluker, so I'm sure the minutes can be amended.
Yeah, otherwise, it doesn't make sense, Chairman.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Go ahead.
And Chairman, I've got 2 points on page 8, Chairman. The first one, Chairman, in response to Councillor Siddle's apology, I said that I did not believe it to be sincere, and I stand by that comment, Chairman, and I asked for that to be put in the minutes, but I noticed that's not there. And I think it's important, Chairman, given that it's likely to be considered in another place, but of course the record is there on the tape. And Chairman, with regards to that, Councillor Siddle specifically mentions members of the Conservative Party, but I think, Chairman, if one listens to the tape, you'll find that he was actually disingenuous to some individual members as well, Chairman. And I've got one other item on page 8 as well. Thank you.
Well, I'll address that one, Councillor Fluker. We had been in contact, and I had mentioned that fact to the committee clerk. But as you're well aware, minutes are not contemporaneous notes, and we have the benefit of the recording and the video of both meetings, so that what your comments have been recorded for posterity. Would you like to move on to your next point?
No, Chairman, with respect. I think that we all understand that minutes are not verbatim. Contemporaneous means something else. But nevertheless, Chairman, I do think, Chairman, that it should have been recorded. Clearly, you and I differ, and we will move on. But I'm pleased to say that I know this conversation's being listened to online. And Chairman, if I can just move quickly to page 8 again, Chairman. There is a recommendation there, Chairman, or resolve of this committee, which is quite clear, Chairman. But since that resolve was agreed, Mr. Harwood White has actually said in another place, Chairman, that this role was also to support corporate projects, which we made quite clear at the time that it wasn't. Now, that might have been a slip on his part, but Chairman, I think the question I'm asking you is that resolve correct in the minutes? I believe it is, but I think that perhaps an officer of this council may well have missed that. I mean, there was a debate about this on the basis that...
I recall the debate, Councillor Fluker. I don't remember it specifically, but I think if we can can we review that, Miss Bird, so that we can make sure that that particular point is as it was said on the night, please?
But
Yeah, of course, Chairman. No
Chairman,
problem.
with respect, I actually believe that Committee Services, in the good hands of Miss Bird, has recorded this correctly. I'm not saying I think the minute's wrong. I think the minute's absolutely right. But what concerned me was that it may not have been because an officer's misinterpreted it elsewhere. But I'll leave that to you as well. But again, that's all been recorded for prosperity.
Thank you very much. Anything else, Councillor Fluker? No, nothing else. So I'm looking for a proposer to accept the minutes with subject to the amendments. That's seconded by Councillor Siddle. Those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That's carried. Right. We now move to declarations of interest to disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable. Thank you, members. Thank you. The nature and of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests, and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda having regard to paragraph 9 and Appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. And members, you are reminded that you are also required to disclose any such interests as soon as you become aware, should the need arise through the meeting. Do we have any notice of any public participation?
No, Chairman, we have none.
Okay, thank you. So that takes us on to our first report of the evening, which will be... Sorry, Councillor Lagan.
Thanks, Chairman. Could my attendance please be noted in the minutes?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the next item 6, half-yearly Treasury Management Update. This is found on pages 17 to 34 of your pack, and we are considering the report of the Interim Chief Finance Officer, Ms Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to consider the Council's investment activity for the first half of the financial year 23-24 in accordance with the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy's Treasury Management Code and the Council's own Treasury Management Policy and Practices. The recommendation in the report is that just members note the report for compliance purposes. At section 3 of the report, we summarise the key issues. So, as I mentioned, the code requires authorities to report on the performance of the Treasury management function at least twice yearly. So this is the first of those at the mid-year point, and there will be a year-end report as well. The Council's Treasury Management Strategy for this financial year was presented to this committee on the 26th of January 2023 and was subsequently approved by the Council on the 22nd of February. During the financial year so far, the Council's had an average of £32.3 million invested and has been exposed to financial risks, as is the case with any financial investments, which could potentially include the loss of any invested funds and the impact of changing interest rates. So the purpose of this report is to cover that activity and the associated monitoring and control of those risks. As members will be aware, the Council is currently debt-free, although our expenditure plans for the year do include the acquisition of new waste vehicles as part of the waste contracts, and that will be financed via internal borrowing for this year. And that was approved at Council on the 30th of March. The Council currently engages Link Group to provide its Treasury Management Consultancy and Advice Services, and at Appendix 1, there's a summary of that information providing an overview of the external economic environment. So moving on to paragraph 3.4, the investment activity for the year. As I've said to this committee before, the guidance requires the Council to have due regard to the security and liquidity of its Treasury investments before it seeks the optimum rate of return or yield. Over the period of the first half of the year, the Council's seen an increase in its investments of around 4.8 million, and that's due to primarily timing of receiving grants and business rates before they are paid out to the beneficiaries and preceptors. So the total held at 30th of September was 37 million, and the breakdown of those investments at that date is set out at Table 1. So moving on to paragraph 3.5, the performance of the authority in terms of its rate of returns. So over the first half of the year, the investment returns averaged 2.6%, which is slightly lower than the 3% assumed in the budget. However, as members will be aware, interest rates have been increasing over that period, and it is forecast that the average interest rates over the course of the year will be higher than the 3%. In terms of what that equates to in cash terms, we budgeted for a return of £750,000 this financial year, and we're currently projected to overachieve that by around £500,000. There's more detail in terms of the interest rate forecasts that have been provided by Link at Appendix 2 of the report. So finally, just to mention compliance with the Council's prudential indicators, I can confirm that all of the prudential indicators have been complied with to date, except for the brief exceptions that are noted at Table 2 in terms of the amount of cash that the Council holds in its own bank account, which were briefed on a few occasions during the year, and that's detailed within the report. So in summary, this report provides an overview of the Treasury management activity during the first half of the year. And as I just mentioned, the Council has generally been compliant with its prudential indicators, with the exception of the bank balance being slightly over on a couple of occasions. I'm happy to answer any questions members may have. Thank you.
Members, you'll be aware this is a requirement that we get this report twice, at least twice yearly. We've seen it plenty of times before, and we're being asked to note the report for compliance purposes. But Ms Lucas is happy to take any questions. Please indicate. Councillor Fluker.
I'll happily give way to these wise sages if...
You were the first to indicate, Councillor Fluker.
Chairman, through you, I just wondered if, this is always quite a strange report, really, and bearing in mind what the recommendation is, but Chairman, I think nevertheless there should be challenge from members with regards to our investment strategy. Firstly, Chairman, I'd like to ask that, given that this committee, when it used to be called something else, was advised by our financial advisors to invest in Icelandic banks. And I remember it was Peter Elliott who said that wasn't a good idea, and he was certainly proven right. I just wanted to hear from the Section 151 officer and ask for her to confirm that they are satisfied with the security and liquidity of the Council's investment strategy, and in particular regards to the Lammet Property Fund. Chairman, I'm quite happily take an update on the Lammet Property Fund from the 151 officer, but in advance of that, Chairman, I would say that it fell by 1.5% today, and that over the last 12 months it's fallen by, I think, 14%. So I'm particularly interested in that we are happy with the liquidity of that. I never know how up to date these figures are, but I do think it's important that we understand where our money is invested, and of course I suppose that Link give their advice, caveated whereby they're not responsible if their recommendations don't perform as well as they suggest they should. Chairman, I have got another question, but maybe it's best if we have an answer to that first. Thank you.
Yeah, Ms Lucas.
Thank you, Councillor Fluker. So, as members will be aware, any investment is never 100% secure, and there's always an element of risk with any investments. But I am satisfied that the Council's approach to investment is in line with the strategy, which ultimately is not set by me as Section 151 officer, but is agreed by the Council as part of its Treasury management strategy. So that was agreed by this committee and by Council in February, as I mentioned at the start of the report. So I'm satisfied that the investments are in line with the Council's strategy, and I would just comment that as in terms of overall risk approach, I think this Council has taken a reasonably risk-averse approach to its investments, and the majority of them are very low risk indeed. So that would be the first point. In terms of the Lammet Property Fund, as I point out in the report at paragraph 3.5.1, the average return on that fund is 4.2% at the moment. I would have to take away, we have got the detail sitting behind the trend and performance of that fund, and I could provide that detail outside the meeting, but obviously that fund is linked to property values, so that can fluctuate over time, but the purpose of that investment in that fund is to hold it for the longer term. So with any fund of that type, there will be fluctuations in value during the year and perhaps over a number of years, but the purpose of that is to deliver an investment return over a longer period. And again, in line with the council's investment strategy, there's only a small proportion of the funds, of the council's monies that are invested in those kinds of funds, but as a balance to that, the investment on those funds is generally higher than those that's achieved through short-term investments. So it is about having that balanced portfolio of risk and return for the council.
Councillor Flugger, next question. Can you put your microphone on, please?
Sorry, I turned it on. 3.3.1, Chairman. We're talking here about the new waste contract and a necessity to borrow internally to service a loan, presumably for these new vehicles. Chairman, it came to note, I can't remember if it's this week or last week, but those, I'm sure you've got one, green bins, Chairman, waste bins that we recycle. Chairman, I'm sure you were as astounded as I was to find out that they produce a profit, a surplus of £400,000 a year. So perhaps the 151 officer, if they're looking for somewhere to fund these vehicles, we should look to those good people who pay all that money for their green bins to fund the corporation dust carts, Chairman. So I know that doesn't necessarily fit within this report, but I hope that the 151 officer takes my comments on board, and we look forward to that report coming to Council, Chairman, when we discuss the fees and charges, and in particular the charges for those green bins, which appear to generate a huge amount of money. Thank you.
Councillor Fluker, you will be pleased to hear that that very subject has been discussed by the Finance Working Group and will become part of its recommendations that this committee will hear on the 23rd of November. No, it is the next S&R meeting. Yeah. Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not afraid of asking silly questions, as I think many of you know by now. But the section 3.4.3, and it says the council's 5 million of extremely managed pool and prosperity fund has generated a total return of 203k to date. What is going to happen? Is that going to stay in that fund? Will it get reinvested? Could that money, I've read afterwards and it says you can withdraw it at a notice period. But what is the council's strategy on profits that are made within these investments? That's the first one. And the second one, when I've read the link group, Appendix 2, and I've just written on the top of it, what can we do about it? Is if you're, who's having meetings about where our money's invested? Is it at your level, Ms Lucas, or is it the fund managers? How does this council know exactly where our funds are being invested? What assurance have we got that they're ethical? Are we moving with the policy and the way this council wants to progress? Now we've got a new leadership team. Just those sorts of general questions. I'm sorry, I do have a quizzy mind, and I'd like to know a little bit more information. I'm not against what is on these papers, but I do like to understand more what I'm actually voting on. Thank you.
I'm sure Ms Lucas is going to tell you that our investment strategy is set by the our investment strategy committee. So, Ms Lucas, would you like to working group?
So yeah, as I said previously, thank you, Chair. The strategy is actually set by this committee and then approved by council. So the strategy will be considered again in January of this year, and the parameters of what the council invests in are set out within that. So you could refer back to that strategy document for this year, and officers then invest monies during the year to ensure compliance with that. And in terms of the pooled and property funds, that is in line with our current agreed strategy. If members thought that they perhaps wanted to change the strategy, it's within their gift to reconsider that in January again.
Chair, can I come back?
You may.
Thank you, Chair. Does it come back as the individual figures? Because I think it'd be really interesting. If I could see you getting 203,000 or whatever it is on such and such, looking at the financial concerns we've got at this council at the moment, it might be worth taking it out so our services aren't reduced or whatever decision we're going to be taking. And I think it could be discussed at the Finance Committee. So if I go back, because I've got all the documents, because you know I'm like, I print it off. If I go back and find it, it will tell me where individually our funds are invested, will it, and how much returns we get.
So the purpose of this report and the mid-year report and the year-end report is to give that detail. So that the detail of where our money is invested, as I said, is set out at table 1, and the returns on those investments is reported essentially as part of this report. The strategy itself would not go to that level of detail in terms of where individual investments are made, but it will set out categories of types of investments that the council is prepared to invest in. So, for example, the limits in terms of how much money it would put in as I say, managed property funds or into money market funds. So there's limits on the categories of investments, but within that, then there's some officer delegation to then invest in accordance with that during the financial year.
Can I have one last one?
Yes, of course
Chairman,
you can.
it's important
No,
because a lot of
I'm
people
not.
are
I'm just
watching
saying,
this. A lot of
Councillor.
people watch
No,
this to
you're
understand.
absolutely fine, Councillor
So,
Stamp.
I think you've made me forget what I was going to say now. Oh, for goodness sake. When you get to... Hang on. It's gone. It was about... It'll come to me, Chairman. Sorry, you interrupted me. You can't interrupt me. Forget.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's important to realise that our investments have to be in over very short periods of time because we don't have large balances to invest long term. We get a big intake of money when the council tax is paid, but of course we have to then keep paying it out to everybody else. So the fact that we might have 30 odd million invested doesn't actually mean we've got 30 million that's ours. So we're just having to shove it backwards and forwards until we have to pay it out. So I'm going to go to Councillor Driver first.
Thank you, Chair. And you might possibly have answered my question. We'll see. On page 34 of the report, Appendix 3, I note that the Council has adopted a voluntary measure of its exposure to liquidity risk, and that actually it sets itself a target of 3 million total cash available within 3 months. And actually we've got 25 million. And I'm just wondering whether actually, well, there are two issues surrounding that. One is whether actually we're getting as much return as we could do if we're sitting on a hell of a lot of cash. But it might well be, Councillor Durham, what you've just said might be the answer, but I'll wait for Miss Lucas to come back.
It goes out with revs and bends and all sorts, but Miss Lucas.
Yeah, so as I mentioned within the report, the primary concerns are for security first, so that the investment is safe, and liquidity, so we've got adequate cash available to manage what we need to throughout the financial year. And as the Chair said, that does fluctuate quite significantly during the year as we receive significant amounts of council tax and business rates, which we have to redistribute. Having said that, obviously there is a measure, as it says in that appendix, around the target for cash availability, which is significantly lower than the amount of cash that we have available within that 3-month period. There are other interacting measures, as I said, in terms of what we are allowed or what we agree as a council we want to invest in. So the majority of our investments are in easily accessible accounts such as money market funds. And there is a balance between, as I say, the kind of return we get on those investments and the length of those investments. It may be, as our cash balances are continuing to grow, that we might look to potentially put some more money in longer term investments if the strategy allows, and if we feel that we don't need that cash in the short term. But the primary concern is that we always have enough cash available to meet the council's needs.
Councillor Driver, yeah.
Can I come back just very quickly? Well, I understand that. It's just really, it's a judgment call really as to whether that amount of cash, given the target of 3 million, and we've got a cash there of 25, if it really was to fluctuate enormously, then it might be just a point in time. But actually, if that's carried over some period of time, and we're sitting with a lot of cash, then we're not going to be getting, you know, the return that might be possible. And I know early on that we're slightly under where we hope to be. I heard your point about over the year we will probably hit the 3% or beyond, which would be positive. But anyway, I hope you will take that away and just consider it. Thank you.
Councillor, yeah, I'll come to you, Councillor Bound. Councillor Stamp, do you remember what you were going to say? Councillor Bound.
I don't want to labour the point, but going back to this table here in 342, it's just that it seems a generalisation to me of the investments, and you're saying you do take a prudent approach to the investments, but we're not being told specifically where it is gilts and other things, and how much is cash and property or whatever. And I just thought we might have a bit more detail where these investments are and where maybe more ones we might be more exposed to risk. Is that not possible, or have I missed something?
So, as I say, we don't currently in the report detail every single investment. However, the categories of investment that we do report on at Table 1 do give an indication of the liquidity of those kind of investments. And so in terms of the first one, for example, banks and building societies, as you'll be aware, that's kind of cash which is instantly available generally. Money market funds, again, are instantly available. So they are, they are short term. And again, debt management account with the government, those funds are, you know, extremely liquid. They can be withdrawn at short notice. So in terms of investments that aren't liquid, if you like, it's primarily the fixed term deposits with the local authorities, which is the fourth line, and the longer term investments that we detail at 3.4.3.
Officers have delegated authority and responsibility for making those investments, as long as it's in line with our investment strategy. Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mine's just a generalisation, really, and it's just to say that everybody's been doing Maldon District Council down on their finances, and I think these are relatively positive. Although it's short-term money, it's not money that's actually, you know, going to stay long term. But I mean, we trade on the LME, and in relation to everything that's been going on with local councils, I think we should be very careful on investing in other local authorities, because all the ones we were held up to admire they've sort of failed spectacularly. And I think it's a good job that we do go for sensible, safe options that maybe have a lower interest return rather than the big returns, because obviously they're risky, as we all know. So I'm happy for us to be prudent. Are the new homes bonus included in these? I presume they are they?
Through you, Chair. So I'm not entirely clear, apologies, of the question. I mean, in terms of the cash that the council has available, New Homes Bonus is one grant stream of a number of income streams that the council has. So, you know, in aggregate, the council will be holding monies that relate to a whole different number of income streams at any point in time. But, you know, it's not possible to disaggregate where those income streams specifically are invested. It's managed as a total cash fund of the council.
If I might come back, it's just that we've had a big increase in the new homes bonus, obviously, because times have been good and there's been a lot of building, but these streams are going to dry up, I suspect, with the downturn. And it's just, I was just interested to see how much of the NHB had been invested, but that's something I can do another day. I could do that via email. Thank you.
I think, as you're aware, Councillor White, the new homes bonus is included in our MTFS.
It now we're going through a downturn.
Well, yeah, okay. I'm going to give you one last time, Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Chair. I actually do think we need to be cautious, and I was very aware you've just said it's under officer delegation about our investments and everything. And I think you only have to look at the number of councils who are experiencing financial difficulty. And I think as members, it is our right and our duty to question it. And those delegated decisions that go through the Section 151 officer, is the leader involved in any of that as well? All right, well, maybe when it comes to our strategies again, I think we maybe need to actually look at that. I'm not casting any aspersions. I'm looking at what's happening generally here. And I think we need to just be cautious of all the weight of somebody having that control. It's just a personal view.
I think it's fair to comment, Councillor Stamp, that officer decisions relating to investments of council money is under more scrutiny now than it's ever been, clearly because Thurrock, that is how Thurrock got into problems, because of its questionable investment policy. So, you know, I have full faith in our officers to follow the guidelines. The issues at Thurrock and other similar issues have been due to the lack of member scrutiny into what the officers are doing, which is not the case in this authority.
See, I think that's very unfair to the officers at Thurrock, because it was the members actually agreed to invest in the solar farms. Whether the officers conducted due diligence or not to the right level is for the inquiry to sort out. But that was actually a member decision to.
I think if you read the report, Councillor Flicker, which has been published, the best value report, the majority of those were taken incorrectly by an officer who's no longer at that authority. Thank you. Right. Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Chair. As everybody knows, I have no statutory powers. So, and I think in terms of this and in terms of the questions that are being asked, I think the time to ask these questions is at the beginning of the year rather than now. So if we want to change some of these things or look at how this is invested, this isn't the right time. This is just a report that we're noting. And if we want to change how we might do things, what we invest in, the finance group or whatever, I think would be the right process to do that through, and then through this committee as normal. So I'm fully open to those sorts of ideas.
The point is taken. Thank you, Councillor Siddle. Investment decisions should not be taken, individual investment decisions should not be taken by members. That is what we employ officers for, who should be experts in that field. You know, if we allow members to invest our money, I just hate to think where we'll be. Councillor White, then we're going to end this.
Yeah, I was just saying that I'm happy to report this, but just to say that we should challenge these when they come up. We shouldn't just leave it to the once-a-year decision. I think it's important that we challenge these every time we see them, because sometimes things happen over the course of a period that you're not aware of at the beginning of the year. You know, and as I said earlier, we've been told for years, all these councils like Thurrock, and I think Battledon's now in trouble, we were told we were falling way behind them, and suddenly us out here on this little peninsula, we're actually not doing too badly, thank you very much. I know we've got problems coming ahead, but let's celebrate the positives of Maldon. You know, we're all part of Maldon.
Okay, thank you, Councillor White.
End on a good note.
What you're suggesting is exactly what we're doing, and we don't just do it once a year, we're obliged to do it at least twice a year. Yes. So, you know, that is the whole purpose of this report, which we are being asked to note. Members, are you happy to note? Thank you very much indeed. We now move to the next item, which you will find any second, and that is the Rural Settlement List 2024-25. Again, Ms Lucas, you're back on.
Agreed, noted.
I think we'll let the officer present the report first, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to propose the Rural Settlement List for the financial year 24-25, which determines and awards rural rate relief to eligible businesses. The Rural Settlement List is attached at Appendix A, and it's asked that the committee approves that. I won't cover the summary of key issues, but it is a requirement, as the report says, of the Local Government Act 1988 that the council does agree this, and it's necessary for us as a council to refresh the policy and this policy annually, and no changes are proposed for the next financial year. So unless anyone's got any specific questions.
Councillor Driver.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether this has any bearing whatsoever on definitions of settlement size, and whether this has an implication or otherwise in terms of planning. They may be totally separate, and in which case, fine. I just asked the question.
Yeah. I think the answer is yes, they are totally separate. Okay. Ms. Lucas.
Yes, but obviously the list is reviewed each year in terms of the size of the individual settlements that are listed to make sure that they're still policy compliant. So that is reviewed in light of the latest planning figures each year.
Yeah, can I just ask for a certain more clarification? Does that mean that they are completely separate in terms of how they're viewed, or does this list have a potential bearing on how we define the settlements across Maldon District?
Apologies, but I'm not entirely clear on what you're asking. But the policy doesn't affect the planning decision, but the outcome of any planning decision potentially does implicate the list of eligible settlements for rural relief. But this policy itself would not influence any planning decision.
Councillor Fittock and then Councillor.
Yeah, I mean, if the village was to grow above 3,000, then it wouldn't be exempt anymore. But I had a general question.
Microphone.
Obviously, if the village was to grow over 3,000, then it wouldn't be exempt anymore. So you'd lose that exemption. So there is the level of management there. I had just a general question: is how do businesses know that they've got relief? Is that something that the authority makes them aware of, or do they have to know to claim exemption?
If I may, Chair, I might pass to my colleague Sue Green, because I think she might know the answer to that one.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. So it is something that if the business was eligible, we would certainly make sure that they were aware, but there is an application process that is still needed. And with regards to the settlement areas, they are reviewed annually with our policy team, because the boundary for a settlement isn't necessarily the actual parish. Depending on the nature of where the houses are situated, it is possible to have more than one settlement within a town or a parish. So that is determined by our planning policy team, and that is reviewed annually, along with the numbers of people that live in that settlement.
Councillor Fluker.
Yeah, I think Mrs. Green's almost answered that, because I was quite curious why some of the villages appear twice as north and south. I don't think any appear as east and west, but whilst I'm talking about east and west, Chairman, Southminster is a very, very large, I'll say it's a large ward for civil parishes is concerned. But Chairman, much of it is very, very rural, and there are lots of businesses within the rural area, and perhaps that might be something that Miss Green could look at and see if there is any way we can give some support to those businesses that are out on the marshes and do have specific needs. And with regards to writing to businesses that may comply with this. I just mentioned that one of the public houses in Bradwell-on-Sea closed, which left the other one open for 100% relief, Chairman, and no one contacted them. I understand that the landlord's been alerted to this now, so we really ought to be mindful of that.
Mrs. Green, do you want to make a comment, or will we just take on board those comments?
Thank you, Chairman. So yes, so staff will be looking for eligibility, and if there's any changes, and just apologise that mistake happened.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mine's just a curiosity, just looking at North Famridge, North and South, and it's just dawned on me, which I hadn't thought of before. Mayland is split into two villages. There's Mayland and Mayland Sea, and they're two different voting areas and two different ward areas. And yet it appears, I could be wrong, they're classing Mayland as one village that's 3,100 and whatever it is. So how does that work when Northumbridge, which is tiny, has got a north and south, and Bradwell-on-Sea and Bradwell-Waterside are separated? Why are Mayland and Mayland? Unless I'm wrong, they look like they're joined together, which is really odd, and they're not the same area at all. They may have linked up, but they're not the same area.
Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Chairman. So yes, it is quite a complex decision that's made, and that's why our planning policy team look at it, because there's a number of factors to consider. And one of the main things is actually whether there is a group of houses that are specifically in an area that are linked to a sort of single area. So Mayland, for example, because Mayland has Mayland is not necessarily having two separate centres. So I wouldn't purport to be an expert on this, because as I say, it is very complex, and it is something that our planning policy team will look at, and they will, as I say, they'll look at the numbers of properties, how they are coalesced around a specific centre. So it is, as I say, it is complex. I'm quite happy if members would like to circulate some sort of general guidance on the sort of things that the planning policy officers would look at.
Yeah, I'm thinking this needs further explanation. I'm thinking perhaps if we can maybe get somebody from the planning policy team to the committee to explain this, or do it outside on an individual basis. Councillor White, I mean,
yeah, I live in Mayland, so I live in Mayland, so I do have a little bit of an interest. But what I can't get my head around is we have two different voting areas in Mayland. You've got one that...
I totally accept that.
And this is just bizarre when you've got Northumbridge split and Bradwell split. I think this should be deferred for further. This is completely wrong. Now, I've looked at it in depth. It's absolutely wrong. And I just, this must be deferred so we have further information.
We're not sure if it's wrong in relation to the policy that's being applied. That's the thing. What we don't understand is why they are grouped in the way that they are.
Yeah, and the interpretation of it. I
don't think we can say that these are wrong and you know not consider these, but I think we need more explanation of how this is arrived at.
I think before this is signed off, this needs some really detailed scrutiny, and I hope that the ward members who cover, because I don't cover them, who cover Mayland and Althorn actually take this up, because this is a real problem for me personally, because they're not related at all. They just happen to be next to each other.
I'm sure they'll do that, Councillor Driver.
Thank you, Chair. I might be misreading this, but on page 37 of this appendix, it seems to list the rural settlement areas, and Mayland doesn't appear to be there. I had assumed it related to its size and therefore wasn't defined as a rural settlement area, but maybe I'm wrong.
If I might come back,
Yeah,
if I might come back, it's done on population. I think it's over 3,000. And what I'm a bit shocked about is they've lumped two completely different boundaries together to form one massive village that just goes over the 3,000 limit. But one side of Mayland doesn't vote with the other side of Mayland. They're different wards. They have different voting stations. The mail comes from a different area. It's delivered on different vans. It's completely different. And I think to lump them together just because they happen to have joined up. I mean, Heybridge has got different areas. Maldon's got different areas. Northumbridge, which is teeny tiny, has got different areas. Bradwell's got different areas. Althorn, which is tiny, has got different areas. So yeah, I'm just really perplexed. I hadn't noticed it before, but obviously it's just scrutinising it. I'm like, ooh, that's yeah.
Yeah, I can see you have a point, Councillor Miss White. So we will investigate that particular thing if we can.
Chairman, I do need to check because I believe this this particular list has to be agreed by the 31st of December each year. So I can give members reassurance. As I say, this list and the criteria are reviewed annually by our policy team, and that will be different policy officers. So I can give members reassurance that there will be a proper process and there will be due consideration. What I can't do is to give you that level of detail other than to give you, a professional view that this has been considered by our planning policy team, and that is their professional view that these are the settlements within those areas.
Okay. And I'm not going to accept a proposal that this goes back to the 23rd of November, because that agenda is absolutely chock-a-block and we're going to be there till midnight that night. So, Councillor Fluker, you want to say something?
Well, yes, Chairman, only that, of course, we can't be there to midnight because I'm sure everybody would like to go home at 10 o'clock. But, Chairman, I look, it's clearly Mrs Green is keen to move this forward and we clearly can't consider it, Chairman, but I would propose that we agree the recommendation and that members look at Section 47 and Local Government and Finance Act, where I think they'll find all the answers to their questions. And if indeed they've got any questions, then I'm sure Mrs Green will take them. But there does seem to be some ambiguity.
There does seem to be, I agree, but we do need to move this forward. Is that a proposal then, Councillor Fluker? If you'd like to propose that we approve this, that would be very...
I think, Chairman, if you listen to the tape, you will hear that I've already done that. Thank you.
Okay, then I'm looking for a seconder for that, which is seconded by Councillor Siddle. Those in favour, please. 1, 2, 3. That is carried. Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the whistleblowing policy, pages 39 to 48. Director of Strategy and Resources. That's Mr Dodson.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This report presents the review of the whistleblowing policy and requests that it should be approved for a further 3 years. It's important that the Council has in place policies to protect the Council and the public purse from fraud. There are a number of policies required to do this, these being the Anti-Fraud and Corruption Policy, Anti-Money Laundering Policy, and the Bribery Act policy, all of which were updated and approved by this committee in July of this year. To work alongside these, a whistleblowing policy is needed to ensure a mechanism is in place to allow employees to confidentially report any concerns relating to possible fraud without repercussion. This is an important policy that we highlight in the annual governance statement and is a supporting document in fraud audits. The policy is in place, and although working adequately, had last been reviewed more than 3 years ago in January 2018 by the Finance and Corporate Services Committee. Therefore, an exercise was undertaken to review this, and the draft reviewed policy is attached at Appendix 1. This review was completed by the Assistant Director Resources, and the draft was reviewed by the Section 151 officer. The committee is asked to review and approve the report, and a further review period will then be set for 3 years, or earlier if legislation changes during that period. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Stamp.
Could I ask a question? How many people have actually used it?
I checked that because I expected that question.
That's exactly what I said in the agenda meeting to Mr Dodson. Somebody will ask if there have been
It hasn't, in the last 3 years, we've had no whistleblowing incidents through using the policy.
Councillor Spenceley.
Thank you, Chair. Well, since it was me that raised this back in July, I'm delighted to see that officers have moved very swiftly to renew the policy. I think the next big question is how it's rolled out and refreshed in staff's minds, because as Mr Dodson rightly said, it's a very important policy. And in case people think I'm banging on about this, I should explain why I feel it's a very important policy. When I retired, I spent 6 years working in the NHS, and for the last 3 of those years, I was given the grandiose but rather futile title of Freedom to Speak Up Guardian. And I have to say, the NHS hasn't exactly covered itself in glory in the whistleblowing field. And there are many scandals that we all know about where failure to actually implement and support a whistleblowing strategy has led to multiple unnecessary fatalities. So fortunately, we're not quite in the position of that level of risk, touch wood. But nevertheless, as the report correctly says, the public purse is at stake and the integrity of the organisation. As members, we know that in social media we are accused frequently of receiving brown envelopes, and which remains unchallenged largely, with the creditable exception of Councillor Lagan, who robustly challenged it a few months ago. So it is a very important policy. So I'm very interested, first of all, in how it will be refreshed and rolled out and really embedded in the culture of the organisation. Secondly, I noticed in a report in 2018 of the Finance and Corporate Services Committee, there was at that stage an annual report on the policy. Does this continue? Is this a continuing process? Thirdly, I suppose the question is, what about members? Does the report apply to member conduct? And if not, what covers member conduct in terms of whistleblowing? I think that's all I have to ask. Thank you, Chair.
Good questions. Mr Dodson.
Thank you, Chair. It is reported through the annual governance statement, so that's where it relates to, and the annual governance statement includes a section on whether there's been any whistleblowing incidents within any incidents. I don't know if that's the right word, but any use of the whistleblowing policy to make representations. The new service planning process that we've brought in, through that, all of those service heads or assistant directors should be identifying the policies within their area and making sure that the date and the renewal review period is on those to make sure that it's picked up within the 3-year period. And in terms of rolling it out, we will be promoting this through the one team document to remind and inform officers that it is a document that they need to be aware of and that they can use appropriately should the need arise. And yes, it does apply to members. Thanks.
I think
Good point. It does actually refer to employees rather than members.
Is that? Sorry, within the report it does say on page 44 that it is extended to councillors.
Clarity, Chairman, through you to Ms Dodson. I think I didn't actually pick that up in the actual report, in the actual policy document, so it might be an idea, to approve this, Chairman, and subject to...
No, I'm very happy to approve it, and I think that's a very key point, actually. I had absolutely no idea that we were included in the whistleblowing, and I think that needs to be perhaps communicated to members, that members have the right to whistleblow in relation, I'm assuming that works member about employee about member. It has to go each way. And I think that the protection of being able to make complaints anonymously is extremely important, and I think members need to know that. And I didn't know at all. I had actually assumed that if there was a complaint to be made, you had to stand up and be counted. But so I think that's really quite important. So
Yes, Chair, we can promote that through the weekly member bulletin to make sure that there's an item that goes on there to raise it with members, and I'll have to think about other routes through which we could raise that to make sure that all members are aware of that they are covered by the policy as well.
Yeah, that's Councillor Lagan. You would like to speak at this committee? I will let you.
If it's okay with the approval of the committee and yourself, Chair. Thank you. It's a question. Does it have to be reviewed every 3 years, or can it be reviewed sooner? Please.
It will be 3 years, subject to any changes in legislation that may affect the policy, which would trigger it to be reviewed earlier.
I've read the report, and it's as I echo Councillor Spenceley's sentiments. It's a very robust document. The only, it does seem a little bit cumbersome in its content of the processes which to go through. So there's a lot of internal. I know there's an external avenue that's available. If somebody wishes to make a complaint, they can make it to a councillor or outside the council. There's a function for that. The only thing I'd say, and it's just a view, in the next review, maybe a simpler type of approach would help. You know, these are the steps to take if X, Y, or Z, and just simplify it a fraction. But it's good work. Thank you.
I think our expert, Councillor Spenceley, is going to allude to it.
I wouldn't define myself as an expert, but the paragraph 10F refers to this external body, which is the Charity Public Concern at Work, which I think is also known as Protect. Some authorities have that as a primary contact. So it's just a thought for the future, perhaps.
Okay, members, I think we're all reasonably happy. So are we agreed? Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we now come to any items of business the chairman of the committee decides are urgent. There are none. Item 10, exclusion of the public and press. To resolve that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act, and this satisfies the public interest test. Do I have a proposer for that? Okay, Councillor Fluker, please go ahead.
Chairman, don't speak.
I have asked Councillor Fluker to give us a reason why we shouldn't seek a proposer.
That's much better because you did it with such a heavy heart last time. Chairman, I just turn the committee and officers' attention to agenda item 11 in particular, Chairman. I think there's been a huge amount of public interest in this. I know that people seem to think I'm an expert on the splash park, and I've had lots of members of the public come to me, Chairman, but I've read the report, and I can't really see anything in there of a confidential nature or anything that's commercially sensitive. I mean, we're talking about reworking a contract with an existing provider. Chairman, there's no mention really of any monies in there and how much we're going to charge them. It certainly wouldn't give. We're already negotiating, Chairman, with the principal, so they are totally aware of where we are, Chairman. But I think because of the public interest in this, Chairman, unless officers can convince me otherwise, I think it should be dealt with in public session. And can I just, Chairman, make a point? And I know you'll support me on this, but ordinarily when
I wouldn't bet on it, Councillor Fluker,
yeah,
but you can have a try.
Chairman, when we considered items under section 100A, there was always a reason in the report why. And I think perhaps, Chairman, if your memory's deserted you and you don't feel as though you can agree with me, Councillor Stamp does.
No, I do.
But we always used to have something in there, and it used to say because of sensitive information or because of. And I think, Chairman, just by virtue of the fact that on this occasion it's lacking, Chairman, I think that gives weight to the fact that yes, this should be.
Well, okay, I take your point, Councillor Fluker. I'm going to ask officers for their reasoning for why this needs to be P&C. I don't know who wants to deal with it.
Do you want me to answer that, or you okay? Yeah. Okay. I think the reason for it being marked as not for public wider publication is due to the commercial sensitivity of the cost information that is linked to one specific provider, which is not necessarily that level of detail that's in the public domain in respect of that leisure provider in terms of this detail. So I think that is the reason why it's deemed to be commercially sensitive.
Officer could confirm then, if a data access request was submitted under the Freedom of Information Act, could you explain why that information would not be imparted by the council? Because I don't see it as commercially sensitive. I see it as a core piece of information which should be available to the public.
Ms. Lucas, yes. No, not at all.
I suppose I might have to take that away and consider it. I suppose on the balance of the view of the committee tonight, you may want to err on the side of caution because I don't want to give you wrong advice and consider it under P&C. As I say, it's not really it's not information that we own as such because it relates to a place's leisure and their commercial information. So if it was requested under an FOI, whether it's in our gift to share that information, that is something I would have to double check. So I can't give you an absolute guarantee on that tonight. So I think it would be up to you to decide on the balance of a risk, whether you want to consider it under P&C or not.
Well, Councillor Fluker, the decision whether to exclude the press and public is a democratic one. So I'm going to ask if there is a proposer for the exclusion of public and press in relation to, I assume you're happy for item 12. So for item 11, that the press and public be excluded from discussions about item 11. I need a proposer that
Can you confirm on what grounds, Chairman, under the Act? Thank you.
You've heard that, Councillor Fluker. The officer has stated commercial sensitivity. Thank you. That is proposed by Councillor Siddle. Is there a seconder?
Could I ask a question, Chair?
Yes.
It's a quick one, honestly. Was it not consulted with Mr. Quelch at the pre-agenda meeting?
I can't answer that. It was, yeah. So, was that a seconding for Councillor Thompson? So we have a proposal. I don't think we need to go into this anymore. It's very straightforward. We have a proposal that the press and public are excluded for item 11, proposed by Councillor Siddle, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? 3. Okay, so the press and public are excluded for item 11. Tara, can you confirm when?